Hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, we're making a toddler's booster seat. Well, my granddaughter is of the age where the high chair is a little too young for her, but the chairs in our dining room are a little too big. So we compensate that with a child's booster seat, and they're commercially available pretty much everywhere, but they're really pricey for what they are. I mean, when I was a kid, I sat on a phone book. So what does that tell you? Now, guys, what we're going to do today is we're going to make one of these booster seats, and it all starts off with a little bit of 3/4 inch thick cherry. Well, this project starts off with a piece of cherry. This one here is approximately 8 inches wide and 30 inches long. And what we want to do first is we want to concentrate on making the sides. So the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to take it over to the table saw and we're going to rip it to a width of 7.5 inches. And once we get that done, we will then cut two pieces that are 12 inches long. And what you end up with is something that looks like this. So these will form the sides of our booster seat for the child. So the first thing that we want to do with these two pieces is we want to mark them and cut them to their final shape. Now I want to show you how technical this layout is. I have a can of wax here and a can of spray paint. I've chosen the way I want my two pieces aligned, where I want this to be the outside face and this to be the outside face, and I want this to be the top. So this will be the back side where the child sits. So what I want is on the front top corner, I want to put a radius here, and this is where our cans come in. This is how technical this is. This can has about a diameter of 4.25 inches. So I just want to place it there on that top front corner, and I'm just going to trace around this can to give us the radius for that top edge. Now our spray paint can, which has a diameter of about 2.5 inches, I am going to place that radius on all of the other three corners. Now the only reason I'm placing the radius on the bottom corners is that my chairs in my dining room are upholstered, and I don't want these sharp corners to cut into or to tear the upholstery of my chairs. So we're going to round this off to give it a softer edge kind of thing all the way around. So let's get that marked on both of our pieces, and then we're going to head over to the scroll saw and rough cut off our edges. Well, we now want to sand up to the lines of our radius on this piece of cherry. But let me tell you something, cherry will burn if you look at it the wrong way. So all of this sawdust that's in our sanding belt here just isn't acceptable. It's not going to work. It's going to cause burning even worse on the cherry. So you want to clean your sanding belt. So for that, I use these crepe blocks. Guys, these are super inexpensive. I keep them in the shop. They last forever. They clean all the sawdust out of your belts. They extend the life of your belts, and they give you much better results. And just like that, you have a fresh, clean belt to sand your cherry, because one of the things that causes burning when you're using your sander like this is the wood dust that's caught in the grit of your sandpaper rubbing on here. It's like rubbing two sticks together. You create fire, or you create burn marks. So with a clean belt now, get your dust mask on, and let's get these sanded up to right up to their lines that we drew on there earlier. Well, there's a bit more to do to our side pieces, but not right now. So we can put those off to the side for the time being, and we can work on the seat. And that will be this piece. And this is a piece of 3/4 inch thick cherry. It's 7.5 inches wide, just like the side walls, but this one here is 12 3/4 of an inch long. And the reason it's 12 3/4 is because we want this seat to be 12 inches wide, but we want a 3/8 inch long tenon on each side of this. Now I want these tenons to be half the thickness of our board. So that will mean that the tenon needs to be 3/8 of an inch. So the bottom line there is that I need to take 3/16 of an inch off of each side here to give us a 3/8 thickness. And we can do that over at the table saw. So what I'm going to do is we'll set our table saw blade to a height of 3/16 of an inch, and we can run multiple passes until we get the edges of our board taken away to form that 3/8 of an inch wide tenon. And now using a handsaw, we can carefully cut off the rest of our tenon. What I've done is I've cut in 1 inch in here and 1 inch in here so that we end up with this 5.5 inch long tenon. And there you go, there is your tenon done. Now it's very important that when you use the table saw and you cut this shoulder, it's very important to get that shoulder nice and clean because that is going to be the mating edge to the sidewalls. Well, I now want to mark the mortises in our sidewalls of our booster seat. So the first thing I want to do is I want to mark the position of our seat itself. So the seat, the top of the seat from the bottom is going to sit at 4 inches. So I'll just draw a line here right across at 4 inches. We know it's a 3/4 inch board, so we'll come down 3/4 of an inch, and there is the thickness of our board. I know it's not showing on there very well, but trust me. So what we're going to do now is I want to come in from the edge. This is the back edge of our booster seat. I want to come in 2 inches. Now this is going to be the edge of our seat, but our tenon is another inch in from that. So we will place a mark at 3 inches, just like that. Now our tenons also ended up to be 5.5 inches long. So if we place this mark here at 3 inches in, we add the length of our tenon, which is 5.5 inches. That puts us at 8.5. There is the other end of our tenon. And at this point, all we need to do is on the length of our sideboards, we need to mark the actual distance or the actual width of our tenon, which is 3/8 of an inch. So instead of 4 inches, we have to come back 3/16 right there. And then we will come up the same thing. Instead of 3 1/4 like we came up, we'll come up to 3 7/16. And there is our tenon. So what we're going to do is we are going to hand cut this. We'll score this with a knife first, and then very carefully with a chisel, we are going to chisel out a tenon that is 3/8 of an inch deep, following those guidelines. We will do this on both pieces, and when I get it almost to the depth that I want, I like to get in here with my router plane and just finish it off and just clean it up, get that bottom nice and flat, and that will be it. Then we can just test fit our tenon here in our mortise. So at this point I want to add a backrest. So I have another piece of cherry 3/4 of an inch thick. It is 12 3/4 of an inch long and 4.5 inches wide. And at the bottom here, 3/4 of an inch up from the bottom edge, I have put that same 3/8 inch wide tenon, except this one is 1 3/8 of an inch long. We cut it in the exact same method, guys, with the handsaw down the sides and using the table saw to get that clean, crisp shoulder on either side, and just multiple passes to get your actual tenon depth, which is 3/8 of an inch as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to mark on our side pieces for these tenons, but I want these ones to be angled. Well, I'll try to explain how I want the placement of this backrest. Do you remember that line we drew at 4 inches across there? That represents the top of our seat. From the back of our side pieces, we're going to line up a ruler with the back, and on that mark, we are going to measure in 1.5 inches, and we will place a mark there. Now I want this backrest to be angled at 7 degrees. So I've set my bevel to 7 degrees. I'm going to place it on the top of our side section, line it up with that mark at 1.5 inches, and I will place a line. This line represents one side of our mortise. So from there, I'm going to measure across from that line. Now you want to measure at 90 degrees. If you do this and measure crooked from that line, you're not getting a proper measurement. So measure from that line 3/8 of an inch. That is the thickness of our tenon. I'm going to place a mark there, and then using our bevel again, I'm going to line it up on the top of our side section, and we will draw a line right there. There's our 3/8 inch wide mark for our mortise. So do this on both of your side support pieces. Well, our next step is from the top on our frontmost line. I want to measure and place a mark at 1/2 inch. Right there. And you may notice that I have my bevel like a T. I have it equal on both sides. There's a reason for that. That's because as I'm drawing here with my 7-degree bevel, if I turn it this way and put it on our side profile, because they're 90 degrees to each other, I can align it with that mark that I just put at 1/2 inch, and I can draw the next line. Those are now 90 degrees to each other because they're both 7 degrees off of the 90-degree planes of the end. And then from there, I know that my tenon is 1 3/8 of an inch. So I can just come down here, place a mark at 1 3/8. And again, using the edge with our bevel, line it up with that mark. And there we go. Right there. That is our mortise. So I'm going to mark it out on our other board, and just like we did here for our seat, we're going to cut the mortise out for our backrest. And before too long, you will have your mortise cut for the tenon for your backrest. Now guys, I've always said here on the show that there is more than one way to do every process in woodworking. So if you're not into the whole chisel thing, or you don't have a router plane, you don't think you can do it, let me show you a way that you can do it using your handheld or your trim router. So we'll take this piece and put it aside. We're going to take our other one and place it here. The first thing that you want to do is you want to go around with a knife, and we're going to score all of the edges of our mortise. Now the next thing I have is I have a 1/4 inch straight bit in my trim router, and I'm going to start on a tilt here, and gently with it running I'm going to tilt it towards me to sink it into this mortise area. And with that in there like that, I can very slowly and very carefully, looking in through here, I've got the blade depth or the bit depth set at 3/8 of an inch. So I can very easily now trim out the majority of the material, hack it out with the router. And with that done, you can finish it off with your chisel, and all you need to do is do these last little bits here in the corners. All right, and there you go. And with that little bit of effort, it may need a little bit of fine tuning, I don't know, but we'll just take our backrest and give it a try here. There we go. Looks like it needs a little bit of fine tuning. It's not quite deep enough, or maybe there's chips in there that need to be cleaned out. Yes, there is. But either way, there's always another method, guys. So don't get discouraged if you're not good with hand tools. Don't get discouraged if you don't have all the hand tools that I use on the show. There's another way that you can do these joints. So with this being done now, we'll do a dry fit of our booster seat. When I'm doing a dry fit, I've discovered a little bit of a problem, and it's not a little problem, it's a big problem. And what that is that I measured one of these incorrectly, and the backrest now doesn't line up. They're crooked. So while the seat sits properly, the arms end up sitting like this because they are out by one width of the tenon. So I'm kind of playing around in my mind now trying to figure out how I can repair this. I really don't have more cherry to mill, and I've come this far. So I'm kind of thinking what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to recut the tenon, and then what we're going to do is I'm going to fill in one side with a block of cherry, and we will glue it in place, plane it flat, and hopefully fill that in. So let's see how that works out for me. Let me get this repair done, and oh my goodness, I guess we'll go from there. And while we're waiting for that repair to dry, we can carry on a little bit with the backrest and with the seat. And what we want to do for both of these is on the front and the back edges of the seat, top and bottom, we want to put a 1/4 inch round over. And on the backrest, just on the top edge, we want to put a 1/4 inch round over on both the front and the back. Well, I actually decided to put a 1/4 inch round over on the top and the bottom of the backrest. I think I said just on the top. No, you want it on both. So I've given both of these pieces a good sanding, and then other than maybe a laser embellishment here on the backrest, these pieces are done. So we can put these aside. All right, I think our repair is dry. I have a block plane here. I have it set for a very light cut. It's almost too heavy, so I'm just going to back that off just a little bit. There we go. And I'm going to trim our repair piece here flush with the rest of our seat sides. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is, this is kind of cheating, but you'll make your own little wood filler. And what we're going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of glue just around the outside of this part here that we glued in. We're going to rub it into that seam, just like this. Make sure that you get it in there. And now, believe it or not, we're going to sand this while the glue is still wet. Okay, and while that is not perfect by any means, it is a good repair and we can carry on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remark this mortise properly this time, and I'll get that cut and then we can move on. And at this point, if you're happy with the dry fit, we can move on. You can see here that the only real visible point of that repair is that one little line there, and I'm okay with that. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to mark for our straps. There are going to be 3 straps on this. One will act as a belt to hold the child in. The others will be at the back end here in order to hold the seat against the chair to keep it from shifting or moving. So let me just show you how we're going to mark those out. Well, do you remember that 4-inch line from the bottom that represented the top of our seat? Well, that's where we're going to start. And we're actually going to measure from the back end of our side piece here. We're going to measure in 1/2 inch. And using our bevel, keeping the 7-degree angle, we're right at that 1/2 inch mark, we're going to place a line. From there, we're going to measure over 1/4 inch, just like that, and place another line. Now the bottom end at that 4-inch mark, we can use a 1/4 inch diameter circle template and round off the bottom, just like that. And then we're going to measure up from that 4-inch mark 1 inch, and we will round off that end of this slot with, you guessed it, a 1/4 inch circle template. And that will be the slot for our seat belt, if you will. Now the other slots that we're going to place on this piece are going to be, as I said, to hold it in place on the chair. And they will be down here at this bottom lower end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure in 3/4 inch and place a mark parallel with the back. We're also going to put a mark at 1 inch. That will give us our 1/4 inch wide slot. From the bottom, I'm going to come up 1 inch and 2 inches. And those will be my marks where I round it off with the 1/4 inch diameter circle template, and we can cut these out. Now I'm just going to cut these at the scroll saw, and then once I get them done, I'll show you what I end up with. And now the last thing that we want to do here is we want to run a 1/4 inch round over all the way around just the outside edge. We'll do that on both of our pieces, and then remove all your pencil lines, give everything a good sanding. And if you're happy with all your pieces, we can now glue this up, clamp it together, and let it dry overnight. Well, the chair is completely assembled and the finish has been applied. I applied 4 coats of satin finish varnish. And the last thing to add will be the straps. Now, these are just nylon webbing straps that you can get at any fabric store. And the buckles I got at the fabric store as well. We have 1 inch wide straps here for the seatbelt. And I got pink because it's for my granddaughter. And you just put them in through the back sections here, and they come around the front to form the seat belt. And with the enclosure here, you can just snap that in, and that is solid. She's not going to be able to wiggle out of there. And at 3, I don't think she has the dexterity to open this buckle, but if they do, you can reverse the buckle to the back so it's a solid strap in the front. There is also the smaller straps. These are 3/4 inch, and they, the same thing, have been attached to the back, and these go around the uprights of the chair backing, and they can be cinched tight to the chair to hold it in place. And there you go, guys. That'll call it a wrap on that one for our child booster seat. And there you have it, a toddler's booster seat. Guys, this project is not only fun, it's very practical. I don't know if you've priced booster seats for toddlers recently, but they're kind of expensive. And for the amount of wood and time that I put into this, the price difference is massive. Now guys, you don't have to do the laser embellishing, obviously. This is not about laser embellishing, but I did it because I could and because I thought my granddaughter would think it was neat. So here's the other thing too. Those straps, the straps that hold it to the chair and the straps that hold in the child, do not neglect to put those on, guys. I may even add afterwards. I'm going to see how it goes with this seat and how much she squirms and wiggles and how much that seat shifts. Now, I don't think it's going to shift much at all because it's held quite tightly to the uprights of the chairs, and it's kind of sandwiched in there. It can't go left or right. But I may actually put 2 more slots in the bottom end of each of the side walls and put a strap right around the whole seat of the chair to hold it in place. Overkill is not a thing for this project, guys. If it makes you feel better and you think that the chair is more secure and it will keep the child safer, then by all means do it. Put a 5-point harness on it if you have to. As long as the child is safe and happy, then that's what matters. Now, of course, this also achieves something else. It's kind of a stepping stone for the child of getting out of that high chair and then into the booster seat to sit with the big people, to sit with the adults. And it's a very, it's a huge sense of pride for that child. And if you don't believe me, check that out. Guys, I want to thank you so much for tuning in this week. This project has been a load of fun. Again, I made this one out of necessity because I thought it was time that my granddaughter sit with us at the table instead of kind of being off to the side in her high chair. She's 3 years old. She's old enough, I think, to sit with us and, you know, I won't say have a conversation, but at least eat her food at the table. Guys, if you haven't already, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. You click the bell and then you're not going to miss the notifications of future episodes of the show. Guys, I hope that you've enjoyed today's content. If this applies to you, I hope you're going to try this for yourself because it's really a great project and an heirloom at that. And guys, more importantly, I hope you're going to join me again next week when I bring you yet another woodworking video.